For just $2,000 my husband sold our child. And then he tried to kill me so no one would ever know. Yes, you heard me right. The man I trusted with my life, the man who stood beside me in church, holding my hand in front of God and family, betrayed me in the cruelest way possible. He sold our baby like she was nothing more than a piece of property, and when I found out the truth, he turned on me with murder in his eyes. That night I stood trembling in the kitchen, my back pressed against the cold wall. His shadow stretched across the room as he came closer, his hands clenched. I screamed for help but no one came. He whispered, "You won't tell anyone. You won't ruin me." Then he reached for the knife. And just when I thought it was over, the front door creaked open. But before I tell you who walked in, let me introduce myself properly. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 68 years old and I'm speaking to you right now from Dallas, Texas. I've lived a long life, and I've carried this secret for many years. Today, I feel it's time to share it with the world. Not because it's easy, but because maybe, just maybe, my story will save someone else from going through what I went through. Before we begin, please, if you love stories like this, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you don't miss the rest of this journey. And let me know in the comments, which part of the country are you watching from? I'd love to know where my story is reaching. Now let's go back to where it all started, because this tragedy didn't happen overnight. It began in a small, hopeful town with a younger version of me who believed in love, family, and happily ever afters. When I first met Thomas, I was just 21 years old. He was tall, charming, with a smile that could melt a frozen river. Everyone in town said I was lucky to have caught his eye. My parents were proud. My friends were jealous. And I was in love. He courted me with flowers, walks under the Texas sun, and promises whispered in the dark. Our wedding was simple but beautiful. I wore a white dress my mother sewed by hand, and Thomas looked so handsome in his black suit. We said our vows, kissed, and began what I thought would be a forever love story. For the first year, things felt like a dream. We had a tiny home, filled with laughter and hope. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought my life was complete. But life has a cruel way of showing you who people really are. The first signs of change were small. Thomas stayed out late more often. His voice grew sharp, his patience short. Money seemed to slip through his fingers, yet he always had excuses. I told myself it was just stress, that things would get better once the baby came. But deep down, fear was planting its roots. When our baby girl Emily was born, I thought she would bring us closer. She was the sweetest little angel with bright blue eyes that shone like mine. I held her close every night, whispering dreams of the future. But Thomas seemed distant. Instead of pride, I saw annoyance in his eyes. He didn't like the crying, the responsibility, the bills. He kept talking about opportunities and quick money. But I never imagined the darkness of what he was planning. One night I overheard him on the phone. His voice was low, cold, nothing like the man I married. He said, 2,000. Cash. No questions asked. She's healthy. You'll get her this weekend. My heart nearly stopped beating. At first I thought I had misheard. I pressed my hand to my mouth to keep from screaming. $2,000 for our baby. For Emily. I confronted him, shaking, begging him to tell me it was a lie. But instead, he turned on me with eyes full of hate I'd never seen before. He shoved me back and snarled, "You weren't supposed to know. Now I have no choice." And that's when he reached for the knife. The door creaked open. For just $2,000 my husband sold our child. And then he tried to kill me so no one would ever know. Yes, you heard me right. The man I trusted with my life, the man who stood beside me in church, holding my hand in front of God and family, betrayed me in the cruelest way possible. He sold our baby like she was nothing more than a piece of property, and when I found out the truth, he turned on me with murder in his eyes. That night I stood trembling in the kitchen, my back pressed against the cold wall. His shadow stretched across the room as he came closer, his hands clenched. I screamed for help but no one came. He whispered, "You won't tell anyone. You won't ruin me." Then he reached for the knife. And just when I thought it was over, the front door creaked open. But before I tell you who walked in, let me introduce myself properly. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 68 years old and I'm speaking to you right now from Dallas, Texas. I've lived a long life, and I've carried this secret for many years. Today, I feel it's time to share it with the world. Not because it's easy, but because maybe, just maybe, my story will save someone else from going through what I went through. Before we begin, please, if you love stories like this, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you don't miss the rest of this journey. And let me know in the comments, which part of the country are you watching from? I'd love to know where my story is reaching. Now let's go back to where it all started, because this tragedy didn't happen overnight. It began in a small, hopeful town with a younger version of me who believed in love, family, and happily ever afters. When I first met Thomas, I was just 21 years old. He was tall, charming, with a smile that could melt a frozen river. Everyone in town said I was lucky to have caught his eye. My parents were proud. My friends were jealous. And I was in love. He courted me with flowers, walks under the Texas sun, and promises whispered in the dark. Our wedding was simple but beautiful. I wore a white dress my mother sewed by hand, and Thomas looked so handsome in his black suit. We said our vows, kissed, and began what I thought would be a forever love story. For the first year, things felt like a dream. We had a tiny home, filled with laughter and hope. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought my life was complete. But life has a cruel way of showing you who people really are. The first signs of change were small. Thomas stayed out late more often. His voice grew sharp, his patience short. Money seemed to slip through his fingers, yet he always had excuses. I told myself it was just stress, that things would get better once the baby came. But deep down, fear was planting its roots. When our baby girl Emily was born, I thought she would bring us closer. She was the sweetest little angel with bright blue eyes that shone like mine. I held her close every night, whispering dreams of the future. But Thomas seemed distant. Instead of pride, I saw annoyance in his eyes. He didn't like the crying, the responsibility, the bills. He kept talking about opportunities and quick money. But I never imagined the darkness of what he was planning. One night I overheard him on the phone. His voice was low, cold, nothing like the man I married. He said, 2,000. Cash. No questions asked. She's healthy. You'll get her this weekend. My heart nearly stopped beating. At first I thought I had misheard. I pressed my hand to my mouth to keep from screaming. $2,000 for our baby. For Emily. I confronted him, shaking, begging him to tell me it was a lie. But instead, he turned on me with eyes full of hate I'd never seen before. He shoved me back and snarled, "You weren't supposed to know. Now I have no choice." And that's when he reached for the knife. The door creaked open. The roar of the river swallowed Thomas whole. I stood frozen at the top of the slope, clutching Emily so tightly she whimpered against my chest. My knees shook, my breath came in gasps, and my mind screamed the same words over and over. It's over. It has to be over. Mom, stay where you are, a voice shouted behind me. Flashlights blinded my eyes as officers rushed down the hill. Two of them grabbed me gently, one steadying Emily, the other wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. You're safe now, the officer said, though his eyes flicked toward the river with uncertainty. Safe. The word felt empty. I had seen Thomas go under, but I hadn't seen him come back up. That river was strong, deep, and merciless. But Thomas was stronger and crueler. Get a search team in that water, another officer barked into his radio. We need to recover the suspect, dead or alive. They guided me back toward the flashing lights of the police cars. Neighbors had gathered, whispering in shock, their faces pale in the red and blue glow. Mrs. Turner, with a bandage on her head, limped toward me and pulled me into her arms. "Oh, Maggie," she cried softly. "I thought we'd lost you." I held her tight, my body trembling. He tried to sell Emily, I whispered, my words breaking apart with sobs. For just $2,000. He would have killed me, Mrs. Turner. He almost did. Her eyes filled with tears and she stroked my back. You're safe now, dear. That's what matters. That's what matters. But even as she said it, the searchlights on the river revealed nothing. No body. No sign of Thomas. Hours passed. They dragged the waters, pulled branches and debris from the current, but the officers finally shook their heads. He's gone, one said. If the river didn't kill him, it carried him miles downstream. Either way, he's not coming back. Everyone seemed relieved. Everyone but me. My heart whispered the truth. Men like Thomas don't just vanish. Days turned into weeks. The police closed the case, listing him as missing and presumed drowned. I tried to rebuild, to breathe again, to cradle Emily without fear. Friends came by with food. The church prayed for me. Slowly, the town went back to normal. But I couldn't. Not fully. At night, I locked every door twice, checked every window, and kept Emily in my arms until she fell asleep. Sometimes I swore I heard footsteps outside, or the floorboards creak when no one was there. One night, about 3 months later, I was rocking Emily to sleep when I heard a soft tap on the window. My body went cold. Top, top, top. I turned slowly, my heart hammering in my chest. The curtains swayed gently as the wind brushed them aside. And there, pressed against the glass, was a muddy handprint. The muddy handprint smeared across the window froze my blood. My arms tightened around Emily as she whimpered against my shoulder. The night was silent except for the soft creak of the curtains brushing against the glass. I wanted to believe it was nothing. Maybe a neighbor's child playing a prank. Maybe the wind had pressed some dirt against the window. But deep down my soul screamed the truth. Thomas. I whispered to myself. No, it can't be. He's gone. The river took him. But even as I said it, I remembered the fire in his eyes that night, his voice hissing. You'll never escape me. I backed away slowly, clutching Emily tight, and grabbed the phone. My fingers shook as I dialed Mrs. Turner. Hello, her sleepy voice answered. Mrs. Turner, I whispered urgently, someone's outside my window. There's a handprint. What if it's him? Silence. Then her voice firmed. Lock every door, Maggie. Don't open anything until I get there. I hung up and raced through the house, checking every lock twice. The front door, the back door, the windows, all sealed. My heart thudded louder than my footsteps. Suddenly, top, top, top. This time at the back door. Emily began crying louder, her tiny fists clutching at my dress. I pressed her against my chest, tears stinging my eyes. Shh, baby. Please be quiet. I crept toward the kitchen where the back door stood. The tapping stopped. For a moment all was silent. Then slowly the doorknob began to turn. I nearly screamed. Who's there? I shouted, my voice cracking. No answer. Just the creak of metal twisting. I grabbed a frying pan from the counter, clutching it with my free hand like a weapon. My breath came in shallow gasps. Then footsteps. Running up the porch steps. I froze. But before the door could open, a voice shouted. Maggie! It's me. Open up. Mrs. Turner. Relief flooded through me and I hurried to the door. When I opened it, she rushed in, flashlight in hand. She saw the muddy handprint on the window and the wet footprints trailing along the porch. Her face went pale. Oh dear Lord, she whispered. He's alive. My knees nearly gave out. I clutched Emily tighter, sobbing. I knew it. I knew he'd come back. Mrs. Turner grabbed my shoulders. Listen to me, Maggie. If Thomas survived that river, he's more dangerous than ever. We need the police right now. She reached for the phone. But before she could dial, we both heard it, coming from upstairs. The creak of floorboards. Someone was already inside the house. The creak of the upstairs floorboards sent a jolt of terror through my body. My arms tightened around Emily as she squirmed and wailed, her little cries echoing up the staircase. Mrs. Turner's eyes were wide, her knuckles white as she gripped the flashlight. She whispered, He's in the house, Maggie. He's upstairs. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. How? How could he have gotten in? The muddy handprint on the window flashed in my mind. A window upstairs. He must have slipped in before I locked everything. Another slow, deliberate creak. The sound of someone moving from one room to the next, each step deliberate, like a predator stalking prey. Mrs. Turner pressed the phone to her ear, her voice shaking as she whispered to the operator. This is an emergency, he's inside the house. Hurry. But even as she spoke, I could feel him above us. I could feel Thomas. His hatred pressed against the walls, his presence filling every corner of the home that had once been our safe place. "Take Emily," Mrs. Turner whispered, shoving the flashlight into my hand. "If he comes down, I'll distract him. You run." I shook my head violently. "No. He'll kill you." But she gave me a look strong, determined. "Better me than that, baby. Now hush." The floor above us groaned again. Then silence. Long, suffocating silence. My breath caught in my throat. Maybe he was waiting. Maybe he was listening. And then suddenly, the sharp crash of glass shattering came from upstairs. Emily screamed. I nearly dropped the flashlight. "Mrs. Turner grabbed my arm. "He's breaking something. Maggie, we need to move now." We crept toward the front door. Every step painfully slow. The flashlight beam shaking in my hand. I could almost taste freedom, almost feel the cool night air brushing against my face. My hand touched the doorknob. Relief surged through me. Just one more twist and we'd be outside. Safe. But then from above came a sound that froze my blood. A man's voice. Low. Cold. Familiar. "Maggie. I told you. You'll never escape me." The flashlight slipped from my trembling hand and rolled across the floor, its beam swinging upward, just in time to catch his face leaning over the banister. Thomas. Alive. Wet clothes clinging to his body, mud streaked across his skin, eyes burning with hatred, and in his hand another knife. The sight of Thomas standing at the top of the stairs froze me to the spot. His clothes clung to him, dripping water onto the wooden floor. Mud streaked his arms and face like war paint. But it was his eyes, wild, burning, unblinking, that sent ice rushing through my veins. "Maggie," he hissed, his voice low but sharp. "You thought a river could stop me? You thought anyone could stop me?" I clutched Emily closer to my chest, her tiny body trembling against mine. My heart hammered so loudly I was sure he could hear it from above. Mrs. Turner stepped in front of me, her arm out like a shield. "Thomas, listen to me," she said firmly, though her voice shook. "The police are on their way. Put the knife down before it's too late." Thomas laughed. A chilling, broken sound. "Too late? It's already too late. She ruined my life and now I'll ruin hers." His eyes flicked down to me, his lip curling. "Give me the baby, Maggie. Now." Tears streamed down my cheeks. "Never. You'll never touch her again." His jaw tightened and suddenly, he started down the stairs, slow and deliberate, each step creaking under his weight. My legs threatened to give way, but Mrs. Turner grabbed my arm and hissed, "Run when I say so. Don't look back." But Thomas was faster than fear itself. Halfway down the stairs he lunged, leaping over the railing like a wild animal. He landed just feet from us, the knife raised high. I screamed. Mrs. Turner shoved me hard toward the front door. "Go, Maggie," she yelled. I stumbled forward, clutching Emily, as Thomas slashed the knife toward Mrs. Turner. She blocked him with the heavy phone in her hand, the blade slicing into the wood of the doorframe instead. The sound of metal on wood rang out as Emily wailed in terror. I reached the door, fumbling with the lock, my hands shaking so badly I could barely twist it. Thomas roared behind me, the sound of a man consumed by rage. Finally, the door swung open, and I stumbled into the night air. But before I could take a single step, a hand clamped down on my shoulder. I screamed, thinking it was Thomas, and then I heard the voice. "Dallas Police. We've got you, ma'am." Flashlights blinded me as two officers rushed past, storming into the house. I collapsed onto the porch, clutching Emily so tightly she could barely breathe. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived, because a second later, I heard the officer shout inside, "Drop the knife. Drop it now." And then came a sound that made my heart stop cold. A gunshot. The gunshot tore through the night, echoing down the street. My ears rang, my body froze, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. Emily screamed in my arms, her tiny cries mixing with the chaos inside. Mrs. Turner's voice pierced the air. "No. Don't shoot." Then silence. Heavy. Suffocating. I pressed my back against the porch rail, trembling, waiting, praying. Were they dragging his body out? Was it over? Or had the shot hit someone else? The door burst open, and two officers rushed out, guns still raised. "Stay down, ma'am," one shouted. His eyes flicked over me and the baby, making sure we were alive. Behind them, I saw Mrs. Turner stumbling out, her hair disheveled, her face pale, but alive. She clutched her arm where blood seeped through her sleeve. He tried to stab me, she gasped. The officer, he fired. My stomach dropped. Thomas? I whispered. The officers exchanged a look. Then one shook his head. He went down, but he's gone. Gone, I repeated, my voice trembling. He bolted out the back window, the officer explained breathlessly. The bullet grazed him. He's injured, but he's on foot. We're setting up a perimeter now. I nearly collapsed. How many times could a man escape death? The river hadn't drowned him. The police hadn't stopped him. And now, even a gunshot couldn't hold him down. They rushed Mrs. Turner into an ambulance, urging me to follow for safety, but I couldn't stop staring at the dark woods behind the house. Somewhere out there, Thomas was bleeding, furious, and desperate. And I knew one thing with chilling certainty. He wasn't running to escape. He was running to finish what he started. That night, the police put me and Emily in protective custody. We stayed in a small, guarded safe house on the edge of town. Every door was locked, every window nailed shut, officers stationed outside. They told me to rest, that Thomas wouldn't get far with his wound. But as I lay there in the dim light, Emily finally drifting to sleep in her crib, I couldn't close my eyes. My ears strained at every sound, the ticking clock, the rustle of leaves outside. And then there it was. A scrape. Metal against metal. I turned toward the window. My heart stopped. The lock was moving. The sound of the lock shifting on the window nearly stopped my heart. My whole body stiffened as I sat frozen in the dim safehouse room. Emily stirred in her crib, her little whimpers cutting into the silence. I stared at the window. The latch wiggled again, slow, deliberate, like someone testing it. No. It couldn't be. The police swore the place was secure. Officers were stationed outside. Nobody could get close without being seen. But then, I saw it. The faint outline of a hand. Muddy. Pressed against the glass. My breath caught in my throat. It was him. I snatched Emily from her crib, clutching her against me. My trembling fingers reached for the emergency button on the wall, but before I could press it, a shadow moved past the glass. A voice low and chilling slithered through the night. Maggie! I screamed. Emily wailed. The door to the room burst open, and two officers rushed in, guns raised. Ma'am, get down, one shouted. He radioed quickly. Suspect at the north window. Repeat, suspect at the north window. The window rattled harder now, the glass vibrating under the force. You can't hide forever. Thomas's voice roared. She's mine. Both of you are mine. The officers shoved me and Emily into the hallway, forming a shield around us. One of them barked. Move her to the basement now. We ran, Emily crying uncontrollably. My heart hammering so loud it drowned out everything else. The safehouse walls seemed to close in, every step echoing like a drumbeat of doom. But then, an ear-splitting crash shattered the air. Glass exploded from the window. A figure hurled itself inside. Thomas. His face was pale, streaked with dried blood, his shirt torn, one arm bandaged crudely where the bullet had grazed him. But his grip on the knife was strong. Too strong. The officers opened fire. Gunshots cracked through the house. Thomas roared like a wounded beast, diving behind the sofa for cover. Go! Go! The officer shoved me toward the basement stairs, bullets flying behind us. I clutched Emily so tightly she gasped for air. My legs barely obeyed me as I stumbled down into the darkness. But before I reached the bottom step, I froze. Because standing in the shadows of the basement was another man. And he was holding a gun. I froze on the basement steps, clutching Emily so tightly she whimpered in my arms. The dim bulb above flickered, casting just enough light for me to see him. A tall man standing in the shadows, a gun glinting in his hand. My breath caught. No, no, please. The man stepped forward slowly, and for a moment I thought my knees would give out. But then I saw the badge clipped to his belt. Ma'am, I'm Agent Collins, he said firmly, his voice low but steady. I'm with U.S. Marshals. You're safe. Stay calm. Relief flooded through me so quickly I nearly collapsed. My chest heaved as I whispered, safe? No one is safe. He's here, he broke through the window. He's going to kill us. Agent Collins's eyes hardened. I know. We've been tracking him since he vanished from the river. We've suspected for weeks he was still alive. That's why I was sent here. To protect you in case he showed up. Gunfire cracked upstairs, shaking the floorboards above us. Emily shrieked, and I covered her ears, rocking her desperately. Collins raised his gun toward the ceiling, his jaw tight. He's like a ghost, your husband. Every time we think he's gone, he slips away. But tonight it ends. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe anyone could stop Thomas. But the memory of that muddy handprint, that voice outside the window, the fire in his eyes, told me Thomas would never stop. Not until one of us was dead. Suddenly, boom. The basement door at the top of the stairs flew open. Wood splintered as Thomas's shadow loomed in the doorway. His knife gleamed in one hand, his other arm dripping blood down his sleeve. Maggie, he roared, his voice shaking the walls. You can hide all you want, she's coming with me. Collins fired. The bullet slammed into the doorframe inches from Thomas's head, splinters raining down. Drop the knife. Collins bellowed. But Thomas only laughed. A deep, broken laugh that chilled me to the bone. You think you can stop me? Nobody can stop me. He charged down the stairs like a wild animal. Collins opened fire again. The room thundered with gunshots. My ears rang as I fell to the ground, covering Emily with my body. And then silence. When I looked up, Collins was on the floor, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping through his jacket. His gun skidded across the concrete. Thomas stood over him, grinning, the knife raised high. And his eyes locked on me. Thomas's grin stretched wider, his knife glinting under the single flickering bulb in the basement. He kicked Collins's gun farther away with his boot, never taking his eyes off me. Maggie, he said softly, almost tenderly, you've caused me so much trouble. Running, hiding, making me look like a fool. His smile twisted. But tonight it's over. I clutched Emily tighter, my body trembling. Her tiny sobs rattled against my chest, and I could feel her heart beating as fast as mine. Thomas, please. She's your daughter. You don't have to do this. His face darkened. Don't you dare call her mine. His voice cracked with fury. You gave her away. You never wanted her. You never wanted me. That's not true. My voice broke, but I forced the words out. I loved you once, Thomas. But you chose money. You sold our baby like she was nothing. You tried to kill me so no one would know. For the first time, Thomas's eyes flickered. Something raw and painful passed across his face, but it was gone in an instant, swallowed by rage. He raised the knife. You talk too much. Stop. Collins coughed from the floor, blood pooling beneath him. He tried to reach for his radio with his good arm. Backup's on the way, Thomas. You'll never make it out alive. Thomas snarled and kicked him hard in the ribs, sending the radio skittering into the shadows. Collins groaned, curling against the concrete. My heart pounded in my throat. I was cornered. No way up the stairs, Thomas blocked it. No way out through the tiny basement windows, too small for me and Emily to fit. And then, I spotted it. In the far corner behind a pile of boxes sat an old furnace. Rusted but still connected to a gas line. My eyes darted from the furnace back to Thomas. An idea sparked in my mind. Dangerous. Desperate. But it might be the only chance Emily and I had. Thomas stepped closer, the knife raised high, his shadow stretching across the wall like a monster from a nightmare. Say goodbye, Maggie. I shifted Emily against my hip, my hand creeping toward the furnace valve. My fingers gripped it, heart racing. If I turned it, if I filled this basement with gas, maybe, just maybe, I could buy us a chance to survive. But Thomas saw me move. His eyes narrowed. His grin vanished. What are you doing? He hissed, stepping down the last stair, knife gleaming, his voice low and deadly. I twisted the valve. Gas hissed into the air. And Thomas lunged. The hiss of gas filled the basement, sharp and acrid. My lungs burned as I sucked in the poisoned air, clutching Emily tighter. Her cries grew weaker, muffled against my shoulder. Thomas froze mid-step, nostrils flaring. His eyes darted to the furnace, then back to me. His grin returned, darker this time. Clever little wife, he sneered. But do you really want to die with me? I coughed, my eyes watering. If it means Emily lives, I'll do whatever it takes. He laughed, the sound jagged and cruel. You think you can scare me with fire? I'd rather burn us all than lose. Collins groaned from the floor, struggling to push himself upright with his uninjured arm. His voice was weak but urgent. Maggie, listen to me. Don't light it. You'll never survive the blast. But Thomas was already moving again, knife raised. My hand shot out, groping for anything I could use. My fingers landed on a jagged piece of broken wood from a splintered crate. I yanked it up, holding it like a spear. He lunged. I screamed, thrusting the wood forward. It caught him in the side, not deep enough to stop him, but enough to make him roar in pain. His knife slashed wildly, missing Emily by inches. We stumbled across the basement, gas hissing louder, my vision swimming. I could barely breathe. Give her to me, Thomas bellowed, his spit flying as his face twisted with rage. She belongs to me. You both belong to me. No. I cried, my voice breaking. Not anymore. And then an explosion of sound. Boom! The basement door upstairs burst open again. Officers stormed down the steps, guns raised. Drop the knife, one shouted. Thomas froze, knife inches from my throat, his chest heaving. His eyes flicked from me to Emily, then to the line of officers closing in. For a split second I thought he might surrender. But then with a wild scream, Thomas slashed the knife downward. Time slowed. I could see the blade glinting as it cut through the air, headed straight for me. My scream caught in my throat when, crack, gunfire exploded in the basement. The officers fired all at once, the deafening blasts bouncing off the concrete walls. Sparks lit up as bullets slammed into pipes and wood. Thomas jerked, his body twisting. One bullet tore into his shoulder, another his leg. He stumbled, but he didn't fall. His knife slashed across my arm, hot pain searing as blood soaked through my sleeve. Emily shrieked. I clutched her tighter, stumbling back against the furnace. The hiss of gas grew louder, filling my nostrils until I could barely think. Thomas roared like a wounded animal. You think this stops me? His eyes were wild, spittle flying as he staggered forward, raising the knife again. Drop it, the lead officer shouted, firing another shot. This time the bullet grazed Thomas's temple, blood streaming down the side of his face. But still he did not fall. He laughed. A horrible, broken laugh. I'll take you all with me. And then his eyes darted to the furnace, to the gas valve hissing wide open. My blood froze. He lunged toward it, knife flashing. If I can't have her, and no one can. No. I screamed, shoving Emily into Collins's arms as he crawled across the floor. With every ounce of strength I had left, I hurled myself at Thomas. We collided hard, slamming against the furnace. The metal clanged, the gas hissing violently. His knife nicked the pipe, sparks flew. The officers dove for cover. Collins screamed, "Get down!" And then, boom! A violent flash of light swallowed everything. Heat roared against my skin. The basement shook, walls trembling as fire erupted. And then darkness. The world was fire. Heat ripped across my skin as the blast hurled me backward. My ears rang so loudly I couldn't even hear my own scream. One moment I was clutching Thomas, the next I was weightless, flung like a rag doll through the air. I crashed into the concrete wall, the breath torn from my lungs. For a moment, just a heartbeat. I thought it was the end. But then, I opened my eyes. The basement was chaos. Flames licked across the ceiling, gnawing at the wooden beams. Smoke poured in thick waves, choking me. My throat burned, my lungs seared, but I forced myself to move. Emily! I croaked, my voice raw. Emily! Through the haze I spotted Collins, his uniform charred and bloodied, shielding Emily with his own body. She was screaming, alive. Relief flooded me so hard I nearly collapsed. But then my eyes found him. Thomas. He was on his knees near the furnace, his clothes burned, skin blistered, hair singed. And yet he was still alive. His hand clenched the knife, knuckles white, his eyes wild with hatred even through the flames. You can't take her, he rasped, his voice broken but terrifying. The officers tried to move in, but the fire trapped them back at the stairs. One shouted, "We can't reach them. Get out now." The building groaned above us, wood snapping as if the house itself was about to collapse. Thomas staggered to his feet, swaying but still gripping the knife. He looked more like a monster than a man now. His face burned, twisted, his body shaking, but his obsession burning stronger than ever. And then he charged. Straight at me. I scrambled back. Blood pouring from my arm, smoke filling my chest. My legs were weak. Emily's screams echoed in my head, giving me the strength to grab a fallen metal pipe from the debris. As Thomas lunged, knife raised high, I lifted the pipe. Our weapons clashed. Sparks flew again. His burned face was inches from mine, his breath ragged, his eyes blazing. I'd rather die with you, he snarled, pressing the knife closer, than let you leave me. And then, the ceiling above us cracked, a flaming beam snapping loose. It fell. Right toward me, Thomas, and Emily. The world seemed to slow. The massive beam, engulfed in flames, cracked loose from the ceiling and plummeted toward us. I didn't even have time to scream. Instinct took over. I shoved Thomas as hard as I could. The beam crashed down, slamming into the floor with an ear-splitting boom. Sparks and flames shot into the air, showering us. Thomas went sprawling, pinned beneath part of the burning wood. His scream tore through the basement, raw and blood-curdling. The smell of charred flesh filled the air. Emily's cries pierced the smoke, pulling me back. I dropped the pipe and crawled toward her and Collins. My body screamed in pain, every movement agony, but I couldn't stop. Not when my baby needed me. Collins was barely conscious, his arm shielding Emily even as blood seeped from his side. Go, he whispered hoarsely, his face pale. Get her out before it all comes down. But behind me, Thomas's voice rose again. You think you've won? He rasped, his face half-burned, his body pinned. His hand still clutched the knife, trembling but unrelenting. His eyes, those mad, furious eyes, locked on Emily. She's mine, he hissed. Even if I die, I'll take her with me. I froze. The fire roared louder, beams groaning overhead. The whole house was seconds from collapse. Officers were shouting from the stairwell, their voices muffled through the smoke. But Thomas, burned, broken, pinned, was still dragging himself closer. Inch by inch, his knife scraping across the floor. Closer to me. Closer to Emily. I grabbed Emily into my arms, holding her tight, my tears mixing with soot and ash. I tried to rise, but my legs buckled. The smoke was suffocating me, the heat unbearable. And still Thomas came. His face twisted into something beyond human, beyond sane. His voice was a whisper, a growl, a curse. If I can't have her. He lifted the knife high, his burned arm trembling but deadly. I'll make sure. No one does. And then, just as his blade came down, another explosion rocked the basement. The furnace tore loose with a deafening roar, flames bursting like an angry beast. The blast hurled us all apart into the fire. And then silence. When I opened my eyes, I thought I was in hell. Everything was red, flames clawing at the walls, smoke burning my throat, the sound of wood cracking and glass shattering all around me. My body ached, every inch of me bruised, cut, or burned. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Or why. Then I heard it. A faint cry. Mommy. Emily. I jolted upright, ignoring the pain that tore through my ribs. My eyes darted through the smoke. There, she was sprawled a few feet away, covered in soot, coughing but alive. Emily. I crawled to her, dragging my battered body across the scorched floor. I gathered her into my arms, holding her so tight I thought I'd never let go. I've got you, baby. I've got you. But before relief could sink in, I heard another sound. A low guttural groan. I froze. Turning slowly, I saw him. Thomas. He was still alive. His body was barely recognizable, skin burned, clothes melted to his flesh, blood seeping from dozens of wounds. And yet, somehow impossibly, he was crawling through the fire. His eyes, red and swollen, still locked on me. On Emily. The knife, yes, the knife was still in his hand, the blade blackened but sharp. His burned fingers clutched it with the grip of a madman who would never let go. You! He croaked, voice like sandpaper. You can't take her. I staggered to my feet, clutching Emily against me. My mind screamed at me to run, but where? The stairs had collapsed in flames. The officers' voices were gone. The fire roared around us, the house caving in. Thomas dragged himself closer, leaving a trail of blood and ash behind him. He was a monster now. Not a man, not a husband, just pure obsession and hate. I backed toward the far corner, Emily sobbing into my chest. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might burst. Thomas stopped, lifted his head, and smiled through blistered lips. "If I die," he rasped, coughing blood, "you're coming with me." And then his hand shot to his belt. My eyes widened. A grenade. Where had he even gotten it? I didn't know. Maybe from some hidden stash. Maybe he'd planned this all along. But he yanked the pin with his teeth, blood pouring down his chin. The grenade clinked to the floor between us, its metal shell gleaming through the fire. The grenade rolled across the floor, its metallic rattle cutting through the roar of the fire. I froze. My heart stopped beating. Emily clung to my neck, her tiny fingers digging into my skin, crying into my shoulder. Tick, tick, tick. Thomas's blistered face twisted into a gruesome grin. His voice was a hoarse whisper. "If I can't live with you, no one lives at all." Panic surged through me. I looked around desperately, smoke, flames, collapsing beams. No door. No stairs. No way out. And then I saw it. A small, shattered window at the far end of the basement. Cracked, half hidden behind debris, barely wide enough for Emily. Maybe enough for me too if I didn't think, if I just pushed through. But the grenade. I had seconds. "Hold on, baby," I whispered, kissing Emily's soot-streaked forehead. My legs screamed in pain as I staggered toward the window, shielding her with my body. Behind me, Thomas dragged himself forward, his laughter broken and haunting. "Run all you want," he choked. "We'll all burn together." The grenade's fuse hissed. I threw myself against the pile of debris blocking the window. My shoulder cracked with pain, but the wood splintered. Again, I slammed my weight. Again. Until the gap widened. Smoke poured in, hot air sucking outward. I pushed Emily through first, praying anyone was outside. Her little body slipped through, and I heard her cry out as she tumbled onto the dirt outside. "Go, baby. Crawl. Go." I screamed. The grenade ticked louder. I turned, ready to crawl after her. But a burned, bloody hand clamped onto my ankle. Thomas. Even with his body destroyed, even with death seconds away, his grip was iron. His melted face loomed behind me, eyes blazing with madness. "You're not leaving me," he snarled. "Not now. Not ever." I kicked, clawed, screamed, but he wouldn't let go. The fire roared around us, the grenade seconds from blowing. And then, the world went white. There was no sound at first. Just white. White light swallowing everything. Then boom. The blast slammed into me like a giant's fist. My ears rang with a piercing scream of silence. My body hurled forward. The grip on my ankle tore loose as I was flung through the broken window, crashing onto the dirt outside. For a moment, I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The night sky spun above me, blurred with smoke and fire. My skin burned, my chest felt crushed, and my vision swam. Then I heard it. "Mommy!" Emily's voice. Sweet, trembling, alive. I rolled onto my side, coughing, reaching for her. She crawled toward me, her little arms shaking, her cheeks wet with tears and soot. I pulled her into my embrace, sobbing, pressing my forehead against hers. "We made it," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. "We're still here." But the relief didn't last. The blast had torn the basement apart, fire shooting high into the night like a volcano. Pieces of burning would rain down, and the house groaned with the final sounds of collapse. And then, through the flames, something moved. My stomach dropped. No, it wasn't possible. But it was. Thomas. His body was mangled, blood pouring from everywhere, his flesh blackened and torn. And yet, impossibly, he dragged himself through the flames, out of the crumbling ruin, toward me. Half dead, but alive. His voice was shredded, barely a rasp. You thought you could escape me?" Emily whimpered and buried her face in my chest. My body shook, torn between terror and rage. I had nothing left. No strength, no weapon, no plan. But Thomas wasn't finished. Not yet. He coughed blood, staggered upright on broken legs, and pulled something from his charred coat pocket. A gun. Somehow, in all that chaos, he still had a gun. His blistered hand shook, but his aim was steady enough. His eyes locked on me, then on Emily. "This ends tonight," he hissed. And then, bang. The shot rang out. I gasped, clutching Emily tighter, waiting for the pain. But it wasn't me. Thomas froze, his eyes wide. A dark hole blossomed in his chest. He dropped the gun, staggered forward, and fell to his knees. Behind him, through the smoke and flames, stood Collins. Barely alive, his body wrapped in blood and burns, but holding a smoking pistol. "I told you," Collins rasped, his voice trembling but strong. "You'll never touch them again." Thomas's face twisted in fury. He turned, snarling, and threw himself at Collins with the last of his strength. The two men collided in the firelight, grappling, blood and rage spilling into the dirt. And I, clutching Emily, could only watch as they fought to the death. The night burned around us, flames roaring from the house, sparks lighting the sky like fireworks. But my world had shrunk to one scene. Collins and Thomas locked in a savage struggle. Two broken men fighting with nothing left to lose. Collins grunted, swinging the butt of his pistol into Thomas's burned jaw. Blood sprayed, but Thomas didn't fall. He lunged like a wild animal, tackling Collins to the ground. They rolled in the dirt, fists hammering, bodies slamming against broken wood and glass. Thomas was a monster, half dead, half burning, but still impossibly strong. His obsession gave him power beyond reason. Collins tried to lift the gun again, but Thomas clawed at his wrist, forcing it down. The shot fired into the dirt with a deafening crack. Sparks jumped around them. "Stay down, you bastard," Collins roared, punching Thomas again and again. But Thomas only laughed, a wet, gurgling laugh that made my skin crawl. "You can't stop me. I'll never stop." Emily whimpered in my arms, her tiny body trembling. I wanted to run, to hide, but I couldn't leave Collins. Not after everything. Not when he was fighting for our lives. Then Thomas's hand darted to the ground, fingers closing around a jagged shard of glass. With a snarl, he drove it toward Collins's throat. "No!" I screamed. Collins caught his wrist just in time, veins bulging in his arm as he held the shard inches from his skin. Their faces twisted with fury and pain, sweat and blood dripping onto the dirt. "You're done, Thomas," Collins growled through clenched teeth. Thomas spat blood into his face. "Over my dead body." And with a roar, he pushed harder, the shard pressing against Collins's neck, a bead of blood forming where the edge touched. I couldn't watch. I couldn't not watch. My whole body shook as Emily buried her face deeper into my chest. Suddenly, Collins's free hand shot up, grabbing a burning beam that had fallen beside them. With every ounce of strength left in him, he smashed it across Thomas's face. The sound was sickening, bone cracking, flesh sizzling. Thomas collapsed to the side, screaming, clutching his ruined face. Collins rolled to his knees, gasping, coughing blood. His body shook violently, but his hand reached again for the pistol. He pointed it at Thomas. Not another step. Thomas's laughter turned into a ragged, insane cackle. Even half destroyed, even staring down the barrel of death, he laughed. "You think killing me saves you?" he rasped, his one good eye blazing. "No, Mary. No, Collins. The truth, it will burn you too." And then with sudden terrifying speed, Thomas lunged again. The pistol fired. Bang! One of them fell. But through the smoke and fire, I couldn't tell who. The gunshot echoed into the night, sharp and final. For a heartbeat, everything went still. Even the fire seemed to hold its breath. Then the body hit the ground. I clutched Emily tighter, my heart hammering in my throat as smoke swirled around me. My eyes strained through the haze, searching. Who had fallen? Slowly, the air cleared enough for me to see. Thomas. He lay sprawled in the dirt, the pistol shot tearing through his chest. His charred body convulsed once, then again, before finally going still. His eye, his one remaining eye, glazed over, staring blankly into the night sky. It was over. At least, I thought it was. Collins dropped the gun, his hand trembling so hard he nearly dropped to his knees. His face was gray, blood streaming from his mouth, but his eyes locked on me. "It's done," he whispered, stumbling toward me. I wanted to run to him, to thank him, to hold him. But before I could move, Emily cried out, "Mommy, look." Her tiny finger pointed behind Collins. My blood froze. Thomas was moving. Not much, just his fingers twitching, his chest rising with shallow, rattling breaths. But he was alive. No. Y whisperat. No, no, no. Collins turned, his jaw tightening. This devil doesn't die. He lifted the gun again, aiming for Thomas's head. But his hand shook so violently. The weapon slipped from his grasp and landed in the dirt. He was too weak. Too broken. I stared at Thomas, that monster who had sold my child, who had tried to kill me, who had burned his own soul in madness. I thought of the nights he tricked me with false smiles, the beatings, the lies. I thought of how he had tried to take Emily, to end both our lives. And suddenly I knew. This couldn't end with Collins. This couldn't end with anyone else. It had to be me. With trembling hands, I reached for the gun. The cold metal bit into my palms as I stood, Emily clinging to my leg. Collins's voice was a rasp behind me. "Mary, are you sure?" But I didn't answer. I stepped forward, standing over Thomas's half-dead body. His lips curled into a bloody smile as his fading eye locked on mine. "You'll never be free of me," he croaked. "Not even if you kill me." My finger hovered over the trigger. My hands shook. My mind screamed. And then, Thomas's burned hand shot up, clamping onto my ankle again. I screamed. Emily screamed. Collins shouted my name. Thomas pulled himself closer, his grip like iron. His face twisted with one last surge of madness. "Do it," he hissed. "Or I'll take her next." His grip was ice-cold but strong, like death itself clinging to me. Emily shrieked, burying her face in my dress. Collins tried to push himself forward, but his strength was almost gone. It was just me, and Thomas. The gun trembled in my hands. "Let go of me," I cried, kicking at him, but his charred fingers dug deeper into my skin. His voice was cracked and jagged, but the words cut through the smoke like a blade. "You don't have the courage, Mary. You'll never escape me. I own you. I own her. I own everything." Something snapped inside me. All the fear, all the pain, all the nights I cried myself to sleep after his beatings. All the moments he made me doubt myself. Suddenly, they turned into fire in my chest. I lifted the gun with both hands, pressing the barrel to his forehead. His smile didn't fade. His eye glimmered with mockery. "Go on," he whispered. "Prove me right." "Mommy," Emily sobbed, tugging at me. "Don't let him take me." And that was it. With a scream that came from somewhere deep in my soul, I pulled the trigger. Bang! The shot tore through the night. Thomas's head snapped back, his body jerking once before falling limp against the dirt. His hand finally released my ankle. His eye, mocking, evil, endless, was empty. It was done. At least, that's what I thought. I dropped the gun, my whole body shaking, tears blinding my vision. Collins managed to crawl toward me, his hand weakly touching my shoulder. You did it," he whispered, blood dripping from his lips. "You saved her. You saved yourself." But Emily's small voice pierced the heavy silence. "Mommy," she said softly. "Why is he still moving?" My head snapped down. Thomas's body twitched. Not like before, not fighting, not grasping, but something else. His chest rose in shallow gasps, blood gurgling from his mouth. He was alive. Barely. And then I heard it. Sirens. Police. Fire trucks. Neighbors must have called. But if the police saw this, me standing over a shot man, his body broke in my house in flames, what story would they believe? That I was the victim? Or that I was the killer? Collins, coughing violently, met my eyes. "Mary, listen to me. You have to decide. Right now. Do we finish him before the police arrive? Or do we let them take him alive?" The sirens grew louder, flashing lights now bouncing against the smoke. Emily clutched me tighter, terrified. And Thomas, half dead, bleeding, grinning through broken teeth, whispered one last time, "They'll never believe you." The red and blue lights flashed against the smoke, painting the night in chaos. Emily clung to me so tightly I could feel her tiny heartbeat racing against my chest. Collins's voice was fading, ragged with pain, but his eyes burned into mine. "Mary, choose." The gun was still warm in my hands. My finger hovered near the trigger again. One shot and this nightmare would be over forever. No more Thomas. No more threats. No more waking up in the night afraid he'd come back. But the sirens screamed closer, the tires screeching against gravel. If I killed him now, right in front of Emily, what would that make me? A savior? Or a murderer? Thomas's chest heaved, each breath wet and rattling. Yet his lips still curved into a twisted grin. His voice was faint, but the venom in it cut deeper than the fire or the gunshot. "They'll never believe you," he whispered again. "They'll see a wife gone mad. A killer. A liar." Collins coughed, blood bubbling at his lips. "Mary, if you don't end him, he'll twist the law. He'll turn it all against you. He always has." My hand shook harder. I could feel Emily watching me, her wide, terrified eyes begging for an answer she couldn't put into words. The lights blazed brighter. Shadows of officers ran closer, voices shouting commands we couldn't yet hear. I raised the gun, but Emily suddenly screamed, "Mommy, no," and pulled at my arm. The gun tilted just as the beam of a flashlight cut through the smoke, landing squarely on me. "Drop the weapon," a deep voice thundered. I froze. Thomas wheezed a weak laugh, blood spilling down his chin. Even dying, even broken, he had managed to trap me in his twisted game. "See," he whispered. "Now you'll pay." My heart pounded. The officers were closing in fast, guns drawn, shouting louder. "Drop it now or we'll shoot." Collins tried to push himself up, shouting hoarsely, "She's the victim. Don't shoot her, he's the one." But his voice was swallowed in coughs and blood. I stood there, caught between my screaming child, my dying monster of a husband, and the armed police rushing in on me. If I dropped the gun, Thomas might live to twist the truth. If I pulled the trigger now, I'd do it in full view of the law. Either way, my life and Emily's would never be the same. The flashlight beams blinded me. The shouts grew deafening. My finger tightened on the trigger. And then, a gunshot split the night. The blast rang in my ears, louder than all the sirens, louder than Emily's scream. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I clutched my daughter, my body trembling, waiting to feel the pain of the bullet. But it didn't come. I opened my eyes. Thomas jerked violently, his chest exploding with fresh blood. His head lolled to the side. And this time, there was no twitch, no grin, no whisper. His body fell still, smoke curling above him in the flashing lights. It hadn't been me. The shot came from the police. "Weapon down." An officer barked again, stepping forward, his gun still raised. I dropped the pistol instantly, my hands flying into the air. Emily clung to my waist, crying into my dress. Collins tried to shout something, but the effort collapsed him onto his side. The officers rushed in, kicking Thomas's body to check for movement. One shook his head. "Suspect neutralized." Neutralized. That was the word they used for the man who had sold my child for $2,000. For the monster who had tried to burn us alive. For the husband who tried to erase me so no one would ever know. A simple word, but to me, it was everything. Still, the danger wasn't over. Hands grabbed my arms, yanking me back. "Ma'am, you're under investigation for discharge of a firearm," one officer snapped. "No." Collins coughed, struggling to sit up. His face was pale, his body drenched in blood. "She's the victim. I'm a witness. He tried to kill her, he tried to kill us both." The officers hesitated, some lowering their guns, others still aiming at me. The flashing lights painted their faces in suspicion and confusion. I wanted to scream, to beg them to believe me, but my voice cracked. All I could manage was, "He sold my baby. He tried to kill me." Emily's small, shaking voice rose above mine. "He's bad, he hurt us, please don't take my mommy." For a moment, the officers exchanged looks. Something shifted. One of them softened his voice. "All right, let's get her and the child to safety. And get this man to the medics." He meant Collins. They lifted him onto a stretcher, his blood staining the sheets as they carried him toward the ambulance. His eyes found mine, weak but steady. "You're safe now," he whispered. "Don't let them break you." But even as I held Emily tight, watching the night swallow up Thomas's body in a black bag, I knew this wasn't over. Because the law doesn't care about truth. It cares about evidence. And all the evidence showed was me, a gun, and a dead man who happened to be my husband. The nightmare wasn't over. It was only changing shape. And just as I thought the worst had passed, one officer approached me quietly, his voice low so the others couldn't hear. "You're not safe yet," he muttered. "There's more to this story than you realize." The morning after felt unreal. The fire was out, the police had filed their reports, and Thomas's body lay in a cold morgue instead of by my side in a warm bed. The man I had once called my husband was gone. Not by my hand but gone all the same. Yet I couldn't rest. Even in death, Thomas's shadow still clung to me. Collins had survived, though barely. The bullet lodged near his lung had missed his heart by inches. When I visited him in the hospital, his first words were hoarse but firm. "You need to fight. They'll try to make you the villain. Don't let them." And he was right. The police questioned me for hours, their words sharp, their eyes suspicious. They asked why I had the gun. Why Thomas was after me. Why I hadn't run sooner. Why, as if surviving wasn't enough. For days it seemed like my whole life was on trial. But then the truth began to bleed through. Collins gave his testimony. Every detail of Thomas's madness laid bare. Neighbors came forward, admitting they'd seen the bruises I tried to hide. Even the buyer Thomas had sold my baby to, tracked down by Collins's contacts, confessed everything. Piece by piece, the mask Thomas had worn in public shattered. And suddenly I wasn't the villain. I was the woman who had endured years of silent suffering. The mother who fought to protect her child. The wife who lived to tell the story of a man whose greed and cruelty destroyed him. The law let me go. But freedom didn't erase the scars. At night I still woke up sweating, hearing his laughter, feeling his hand around my ankle, dragging me back into the flames. Emily clung to me more than ever, sometimes whispering, "Mommy, he can't come back, right?" And I would hold her tighter and say, "No, baby. He can't come back. Ever." Still, I learned something through it all. Something I want every soul listening to hear. Love without respect is a cage. Trust without truth is a weapon. And silence is the knife that lets evil grow in the dark. If you see the signs, if you feel the hurt, don't wait. Don't hope it will change. Don't let fear chain you. Speak up. Run. Fight. Save yourself before it's too late. Because sometimes, the person lying beside you in bed is not your protector, but the danger you must escape. My name is Mary. I am 68 years old now, speaking from Texas, and this was my story. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that notification button so you don't miss the next story. And tell me in the comments, what part of the country are you watching from? I'd love to know. Stay strong, stay safe, and never, ever let someone sell your soul for $2,000.